that are going to form the community as of 2015, where there will be free labor, there will be free trade amongst the countries. So this is something that is very important for us to consider as we move along this morning. Next, I would like to introduce Brett, and excuse me please if I mispronounce your name, Brett Scironi. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, so let me tell you just a little bit about Brett. He is senior partner of Scironi and Associates. He has been a lawyer and investment advisor in Phnom Penh since 1993, making him the first foreign lawyer in Cambodia in the modern era. Originally founded as a partnership with Teleki and Gibbons International, the oldest law firm in Thailand, Scironi and Associates, became independent in 2004. Scironi and Associates has provided advice to many of the world's leading companies as well as to the Cambodian government. It provides guidance and expertise in all facets of law and investment, from company creation and contracts to licensing and advice on labor, tax, property, mining, telecoms, finance, due diligence, and government relations. The firm recently expanded its operation to Laos and Myanmar. Since 1996, Mr. Scironi has served as legal advisor to the Royal Government of Cambodia. The appointment is made by royal decree, and the position carries with it the rank of minister. Among other positions, he has served as the chairman of the AmCham since 1998 and chairman of the International Business Chamber of Cambodia since 2002, and co-chairman of the Working Group on Law, Tax, and Governance since 2000. Working groups are part of the dialogue mechanism between the royal government and the private sector to resolve problems in the business community. His co-chair is Deputy Prime Minister He Chong, please pardon the pronunciation, Minister of Economy and Finance. And Mr. Scironi, will you join us up here at the podium, please?
I see so many Cambodian friends in the audience. Some suggested that I should be giving my speech today in Khmer. But unfortunately, my vocabulary is too limited to do that. And in fact, a lot of my remarks are going to be, won't come as any surprise to my Cambodian friends because they live there and work there. So it's actually for the potential investors in the audience today that my remarks are going to be directed. I do want to make a couple, and frankly, I'm going to be able to go through my slide presentation pretty quickly because a lot of what I have in my slides has been covered already, although I will add a certain maybe nuance or aspect to it that hasn't been discussed already. I would like to emphasize what Ambassador Todd said, which is that the embassy in Cambodia is willing to assist anybody coming over that wants to do business there. Ambassador Todd, I've known all the ambassadors, as was mentioned a minute ago, I've been there 20 years, so I've known all the ambassadors. And the AmCham has had good working relations with all of the ambassadors. But Ambassador Todd is the most pro-business, switched-on, proactive ambassador we've had. So he's a good colleague for us locally in Phnom Penh. He'll be a good partner for you if you want to come. And when he says that he'll provide support, he's quite serious about that. Of course, AmCham is willing to supply support, and the Cambodia Chamber of Commerce has also made the offer this morning. We're happy to have new business come. We feel like we win every time a new person comes to Cambodia, because whether you end up doing business there or not, you will see with your own eyes it's a very friendly place, investor friendly, as well as just friendly per se. So it's if you haven't been, then you really should go and check it out. Everybody's opinion changes as soon as they arrive in Phnom Penh. We get a lot of negative international publicity that is largely unwarranted, and so come, you see for yourself. I think you'll be impressed by what you see. Well, let's try to go through these slides in pretty rapid order. Go to the first slide. I give a lot of talks to potential investors in the region and internationally, and people ask why people today, why business people are interested in Cambodia. For me, there's three reasons. The strong economic growth that you've seen already, political stability, and also legal and regulatory reform. So I'll go through all of these points in succession. Next slide. Actually, we can go, you've seen this slide before, go to the next one. And again, we've had only one real hiccup in a remarkable decade plus of economic growth. Of course, the financial crisis affected us in Cambodia, not as seriously as I feared it might. Before the financial crisis, we had pillars of the economy, both of which were affected by the international financial crisis. Exports, of course, dropped off considerably. That's a major pillar. Also, tourism dropped off. And of course, people became very cautious, very conservative in how they were spending their money. So we did have one dip in our remarkable pattern of economic growth, but it wasn't very long lasting. And actually, you can argue that we came back bigger and better than before. Next slide, David. This year, we have estimates already that have been posted after the first quarter. What I would say about these estimates of our projections for this year is that the projections, as long as I've been in Cambodia, the IFIs always start off the year by being very conservative. And inevitably, the GDP creeps up as the year progresses. The only exception, David, could you go back to the previous slide? The only exception, if you take a look at that second bullet point, it talks about agriculture was disrupted by a flood. In 2011, we had serious flooding. It's the only time I can recall in 20 years where actually the projections didn't end up more at the end of the year than at the beginning of the year. And that was an extraordinary set of circumstances. Okay, the next slide. And we go to the next slide. The one important thing about the international financial crisis was that agriculture really came into its own as a result of that. And now this is a dated slide, so you probably wonder why I put on a slide that I copied from the IMF about investments. What's interesting, and it shows a trend that occurred in Cambodia, and we're the beneficiary of that trend. If you take a look at 2008 investments in agriculture, very small, and then infrastructure, not huge. The next year, you have infrastructure going up as well as agriculture going up. And those go hand in hand. Our agricultural sector, one reason it's improved, there's a number of reasons why it's improved, but one reason is we have the infrastructure coming into place that's going to support the agricultural sector. Not only, primarily roads, but also dams, irrigation, and a host of things have really improved. And so agriculture today is a major pillar of the economy, where just a short while ago it wasn't. In my firm, for example, in the early years, never had an ag client, and now I've got multiple agricultural clients. Of course, with the worldwide press for commodities being what it is, and with the arable land that Ambassador Todd mentioned in his presentation, this is a very, very likely place for investment today. We have a lot of land that is either underutilized or unutilized. Next slide. Another reason for our economic growth is the macroeconomic stability we've had. And I would invite you to take a look. Every year the IMF sends a team of people that do what they call their Article 4 consultation. They talk to all the stakeholders. They get a good view of where the Cambodian economy is at. And we always score very well on macroeconomic policy. And that's to the credit of the royal government. Next slide. Again, inflation over the years, we've had a couple spikes. Go to the next slide. The two spikes we've had in inflation over the years were regional phenomena that Cambodia had no control over. So that's one of the many indicators about our macroeconomic stability is inflation has never been out of control. Next Another reason why investors come to Cambodia is they seek political stability. We've had 4 national elections, plus a number of other elections. You may know that later this month we're going to have our 5th national election. There's been stability in governmental leadership, and the political stability has led to security, which had been an issue when I first arrived in Cambodia. It was an issue for foreigners. With the end of the war in 1998, 1999, with the Khmer Rouge either being defeated or rallying to the government, security has not been a big issue since that time. Next slide, please. Third reason that I would suggest that investors find Cambodia interesting is the legal and regulatory reform that's gone on. You've seen all of these things in the previous 2 presentations about 100% foreign ownership and so on. What I would say, a lot of these are in the foreign investment law, and what I would draw your attention to is the royal government, the head of the Council for the Development of Cambodia, the Cambodian Investment Board, has already announced that the investment law is going to be amended again after the election this year. We expect it to be even more business friendly than it has been, and it's not a bad investment law the way it is now, but the early indications are that they're going to be making even more reforms to make Cambodia an even more attractive environment for investment. Next slide, please. And that's what I just addressed, was the investment law. It will be changed, and by the way, that will be, when it is changed, it will be in consultation with the private sector. I'll get to that in a minute, but there is an active mechanism for interaction between the government and the private sector. Next slide. Since the accession of WTO in 2004, a lot of the legal reforms that we needed have been put in place. These are like very basic laws that Cambodia didn't either have, or they were so old they were not modern standard. We've received a lot of input, a lot of support from bilateral and multilateral donors to rewrite the laws and give them a modern standard. I think that even looking at this list, and by the way, a lot of the laws were being changed before. There's other laws that were changed before the WTO accession. What was important about accession to WTO is it gave the government a checklist of laws that they had to get in place to become WTO compliant. We exceeded the WTO without being WTO compliant, and they did it. The WTO wanted to show that they were in favor of some of the LDCs that were coming up. Cambodia was the first one that they let in. The government's taken this checklist very seriously. They've been working assiduously over the years to get all the laws and regulations in place. I won't stand up here and tell you that we are international standard. We're not. It takes a long time to get all the regulations in place, all the laws in place, and implementation is another major hurdle that you've got to overcome. But I think when foreign investors look at the progress that's been made in a relatively short period of time, with a lot of HR constraints, a lot of capacity constraints on the royal government, I think what you can see, and all of these laws are international standard, I think what you can see is the commitment of the royal government to getting all the laws in place and making it an investor-friendly environment. Next slide. And these are some of the other laws that are relevant to the private sector. Again, this process started in the 90s in the first mandate. It's continued through this day. The anti-corruption law, I'll flag in a minute as an important, very serious new development for business. Next slide, please. Again, a minute ago, we had a presentation by Dr. Lin Heng, talked about the government-private sector forum. We have a system of working groups that we have a constant dialogue with the royal government. We have a biannual meeting with the Prime Minister and his cabinet, in which we issue